This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Everybody Lies, I guess we'll call it. It's not lupus. Mike came up with both those jokes, so credit him for that. This is Massive Late Fee taking a look at House MD. I am Mark. With me, as always, is Mike. How are you, Mike?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Good. We're good here. We are, obviously, this is the pilot episode of a new venture. We're going to go episode by episode of House. So this incarnation or this section of Massive Late Fee or whatever you want to call it will last, I think there's like 10 seasons of House. No, I think there's like
there's
7
like 500
seasons.
episodes, I think.
Yeah. So we'll go for a while. This episode will not be as long as other episodes will probably because it's the pilot of a TV show and it's just not a lot happens really. So I'll kind of explain a little bit, I suppose, about our relationship with House right at the top. I love this show until it gets really bad, and trust me, guys, it's gonna get really bad. It'll take a while, but it's going to get bad for periods of time. And Mike, I think you've watched the first season?
No, I actually started watching the second season. Like, it just happened to be on when I got home from like community college. So like, I turn it on and I watch it. And I really strongly followed the second season. I liked it quite a bit. Then like it went away for the season, and when it came back, I just didn't pick it up, and I was fine. I've seen a lot of episodes, I'll see them. They're on TV all the time. I'll watch them every so often.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never fully I hadn't seen the original pilot until I watched it for this, and there's a lot that I didn't watch later too because it looked really weird. Like he was in an asylum at some point or something. I don't know.
It gets a little weird. Well, we'll get there eventually. But yeah, so this clearly. Bryan Singer is one of the people that...
Yeah, that's another thing that showed up. I'm like, ooh, that didn't age well.
Yeah, he's one of the ones that brought this to television. But I think it was more the brainchild of David Shore, and it's clearly influenced. Although there's some usual suspect jokes spread throughout the series. Like there's a few times where. House will say like that the usual suspects. He's like that ending made no sense and things like that, where they make fun of it. And Bryan Singer obviously directed that movie,
right?
But basically,
and directed young boys into the shower with them while filming a pupil.
Yeah, exactly. But this show obviously is a big correlation to Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock.
Yeah, the entire some background. David Shore was an attorney before this. He claimed it was a lateral move because he felt that being an attorney and also being a showrunner / writer for a TV show were both creative professions.
Right.
So yeah, it's set up like a classic. It's a modern take on Sherlock Holmes, where they completely changed the setting from a detective, who solves various crimes with his sidekick Wilson, to a
Watson
elite of the elite. Watson, that's
yeah.
Right. The elite of the elite doctors. He works at I forget the name of the hospital, but he's like the top diagnostic doctor that anyone's seen.
Yeah.
His sidekick kind of is his old friend Wilson instead of Watson, as you pointed out.
Yeah, it's James Wilson instead of John Watson. His name is House instead of Holmes, which sounds like Holmes. But yeah, they mention Irene Adler at one point. This woman's name is the first patient's name is, I think it's Rebecca Adler, and Irene Adler was like a love interest of Sherlock Holmes. So there's a lot of very clear allusions. The hospital is the Princeton Plainsboro Teaching Hospital.
Is there an equivalent of Moriarty or like a recurring villain?
No, they try that a couple times. I believe.
I guess you could say Disease.
Yeah, Disease is the villain, but they towards the end of this season. I think it's maybe it's season 2. Yeah, I think it's season 2 and season 3. They try that a little bit with a reoccurring type villain, but it never really like it's good for a little bit, but it's clear that it's not something that they can continue with.
Yeah, actually, I was joking when I said disease, but actually, I believe in this episode he says that he's not the patient isn't his concern; it's the disease. So
Yep.
that kind of is the reoccurring, villain. He's obsessed with. It's more like I'm a big fan of The Wire, and what I liked about The Wire is they basically treated some of the police officers weren't, they were the stereotypical traditional, like, oh, I'm here to help people. Like, some of the police were just in there to, like, because they like beating people.
Yeah.
They like solving puzzles. And that's definitely, it's like a interesting take. You don't really see it. I mean, I guess in a lot of ways, a lot of shows are procedurals, like, your Law and Order, whatever the fuck they have at this point. There's a lot of Law and Orders. I mean, they're comforting to watch. CSI is another one. They're fun. You kind of know what's going to happen. But I really do think this is at another level. A lot of the medical stuff is pretty accurate from what I can tell. My mother-in-law is a nurse, and she, she's a big fan of the show, and she says a lot of it's more accurate than you would think.
Yeah. There was, it doesn't exist anymore, but there was a doctor on Polite Dissent, which was, I guess it's a blog or something like that out there. And he used to do medical. So when the show was on, he would do medical reviews. And he was a medical doctor. And he would say, when they got things wrong, he'd give it a grade for, how well it portrayed the medicine and things like that. He'd give the soap opera a grade and stuff like that. And like the show, the overall, how he liked the episode as a grade as well. And most of them got pretty good grades. And even when it was like a bad grade, he would say, this is a bad grade for House. House is still far and away better with their medical accuracy than any of the other. And he would often cite Grey's Anatomy. He's like, than any of the other medical shows. And like Grey's Anatomy is, I guess, for him was a frequent,
Ridiculous.
Yeah, of like a frequent violator of medical stuff. A lot of times the things he'd point out is they'd be in surgery and they're not wearing eye protection. And it's like,
Right.
you know why that is. I mean, it's not medically accurate, but it's because if you're wearing those clear eye protection things, the lights of the camera are going to reflect off that, and then you're not really going to be able to see the person's face. So that's
Right.
why they don't do that. But yeah, I mean, that's, technically that is a, an inaccuracy, but so there'll be little things like that where it's like it's easily explainable because it's like, well, it's not really convenient to film that way. So, and we don't consider it important necessarily.
Do you know what the name of the first episode is? Is it just Pilot?
I think it's just pilot. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So in this episode, the show is formulaic, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, again, it's kind of satisfying, but it's like I think it's a more intelligent version than like CSI or something like that.
Right.
Or Criminal Minds is a show I really dislike.
Yeah, me too.
Like in every episode, and this is also done in another show that's really good, 6 Feet Under. They'll have like the person who's like the special guest. In this case, it is an actual special guest. It's Robin Tooney from The Craft, and I don't know what else she's been in, but she's she's a good actress. She's very attractive as well, which I was happy to see her in this.
Yep.
She's a teacher at a she's either kindergarten or preschool. And then she just suddenly starts slurring her words and saying the wrong things, and then she kind of hastily scrawls on the chalkboard, "Call the nurse." And of course, the kids can't read this.
Right. I think they read the word "the."
Yeah, pretty much. So they take her to the hospital, and they're like, "Oh, it's a brain tumor." And then why don't we talk about the characters a little bit, because we're gonna have the same characters. Obviously, Gregory House he's a specialist in what is it? It's just like disease.
Infectious disease and nephrology.
There you go.
Nephrology doesn't come up in this episode, but it comes up in later episodes. But he mentions infectious disease.
Is that diseases of the kidneys?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so he's like this, he's hobbled, he's kind of walks on one leg, his leg is kind of fucked up, which we discovered in the episode. I was kind of disappointed. I thought they wouldn't explain in the first episode. But they explained that he had some kind of broken bone and it got infected, and now he's addicted to Vicodin, which we see him scam it from one of the patients at one point.
Yeah, we get a more detailed explanation of what happens to him later. But yeah, he explains that he had an infarction in his leg, and Robin Tooney, he's explaining it to her, and she says like a heart attack, and he's like, when it happens, in your heart, it's a heart attack. If it had, it's but it's an aneurysm basically.
Right, like a blockage of blood flow is what he describes, I think.
Yeah, and they because of that, some of his muscle died and everything, and now he's got constant pain, and he's addicted to Vicodin in the same way that Sherlock Holmes was addicted to cocaine.
Yeah, which again was a clever little modern update on the whole Sherlock Holmes reference.
And way before the opioid crisis too.
Yeah, so it was ahead of its time.
But yeah, so House, obviously, he's the main character of the show. He's a brilliant diagnostician, as Mike said. Very sarcastic and guarded. He doesn't like to see patients. In the very first scene where he's walking with, well, not the first scene, but the first scene we see him in, where he's walking with Wilson. It's clear that he's embarrassed by his
disability.
Yeah, his disability. He says, "Oh, they all think I'm a patient. I don't want them to think that I'm a patient, but I don't want them to think that I'm a doctor either. And it's clear he doesn't like to see patients. Like Mike said, he cares more about the disease. He cares more about the puzzle than he does about people.
Yeah, in fact, in this episode, he basically never sees the patients if he can avoid them.
Yep.
But then there's I don't remember the exact issue, but his administrator, whose name is Dr. Cuddy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a correlation to Sherlock Holmes, but she basically almost sentences him to you have to do 4,400 hours in this clinic, basically, But actually another thing I'd like to point out that I really like about this is it starts in media res.
Yeah.
We don't I absolutely hate origin stories. I hate if it'd be oh, I'm Dr. House and here's my new team. It's what you can tell is Mark was being a little kind earlier. Basically, everyone except for Wilson, everyone thinks House is an asshole, and they're right. Because he's a complete fucking asshole.
Yes.
He has he's aware of social graces. He just has no interest in practicing them. He's a very intelligent person, but he does not care. It says it's someone who donates money to the hospital. He's completely orange. He shows up and in about 5 seconds, House goes, "Oh, your wife's cheating on you, and stop taking all these vitamins."
Yeah. He's like, you eat a lot of carrots, right? And take a multivitamin. The carrots will turn you yellow. The multivitamins turn you red. Get
some finger paint.
Yeah, get some pink finger paint and figure it out. And he's like, it's one thing for you not to notice that you've turned orange, but your wife didn't notice.
Yeah, he basically walks in and says, "Stop taking these vitamins. Your wife's having an affair," and walks out.
What if he was like, "My wife's blind"?
Right. And so that also turns out to be right. So yeah, we see him in the clinic. It's kind of he really does not give a shit at all.
No.
So he talks to that guy about his his orange skin. A mother has a young child who's having trouble breathing. He's like, "Oh, you don't give him the inhaler all the time." She's like, "Oh, well, I don't believe he should have that strong of medicine." He's like, "Why even come here if you don't believe in medicine?" Which is the whole anti-vaxxer argument. Why even go to a fucking doctor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he basically gives her shit about that, and then the third guy is just he seems like he's a hypochondriac. So he goes, "Oh, I think you might have so and so," and he goes, "I need change for $1." He goes and gets some candy out of the machine that looks like pills.
Yeah.
And he scams a pharmacist and they give him 30 Vicodin for the guy.
Yeah.
And then so he swaps it out and gives the guy the placebo.
Yeah, I think the implication was that guy was it was drug seeking behavior. He was looking for drugs.
So I thought it was just a hypochondriac because fibromyalgia is a thing that often is a really hard to diagnose type disease.
Yeah, it's a diagnosis of exclusion because there's no definitive diagnosis for it.
Right, and I mean some people think it's not even a real thing. So I think they're implying it's a hypochondriac. Can you remember what his other symptoms he said he had were?
He thought he had chronic fatigue syndrome because he was tired a lot.
Yeah, it was that. And he had a headache last month or something like that.
Yeah, and he. And here's the thing, you might be right because I think they were trying to imply that it was drug seeking behavior, but I think you might be right because in my mind, if it was drug seeking behavior, he'd be seeking marijuana, and I don't even know if marijuana was legal for medicinal purposes in New Jersey.
Not really
at this time.
So I think you're being you're seeing it through the lens of the opioid crisis.
Okay.
Because like you pointed out, this is really before that. So, I mean, it wasn't common that you'd hear of opiate-seeking behavior and that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's true. But you wouldn't, and that's the thing, too, is doctors wouldn't give I don't think they'd give opioids for chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia. Like they would marijuana,
Maybe
they do now.
fibromyalgia?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but that wouldn't make sense. What's funny is it's so like no one even thinks about it. Like the pharmacist, he just goes, "Yeah, give me 30 Vicodin." She doesn't make him
Yeah.
sign shit, or there's no like really thick chain of like physical papers that need to be transferred.
Right.
Whereas now you can't go get fucking Sudafed from the goddamn pharmacy without writing like your name, your ID, your thumbprint. Need a semen sample. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
At least I hope they wanted it.
Pound of flesh.
I pounded the flesh.
Right. A semen
Yeah,
sample
so-
smeared on a plant.
I don't know how easy it actually is in a hospital. Obviously, it's another dramatic thing. You don't want to have like a whole fucking process. Like, well, it'll be 30 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, that's like the way he sneaks Viagra. He just like dumps, or not Viagra. That'd be a different move. That'd be a different show. He just dumps some Vicodin into his pocket and puts candy that looks like pills in there. Which how the guy can't tell it's fucking candy? Is this the worst candy in the world?
Seriously.
It tastes just like bubble gum, so it must be medicine.
But yeah, so yeah, he scams that guy, and I think you're right. I think now that I think about it, because I think about the ending, I think he is a hypochondriac. I think you're right. But yeah, so he scams that dude so he can get some Vicodin, and then
Then he meets. Doesn't he then meet up with his team? Because like House will often have like a couple different stories going on at once. So have the main story, the diseased house is trying to go ahead and figure out. And then there will be like a minor thing where like, I'm terrible with names. I will never remember the names of his 3 assistants.
okay, well I do.
I know. Yeah, one's Omar Epps.
Yep.
I think the is he British or Australian? His name's Chase.
He's actually British in real life. Jesse Spencer, that's the name of the actor. He's playing Australian.
Well, that's just fucking dumb.
Yeah. And yes, his name's Robert Chase. Omar Epps is Eric Foreman, and then Jennifer Morrison plays Cameron.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I recognize names now.
What's her first
Again,
name?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Are they
Allison.
correlated? Do you know? Do you know if they're correlated to Sherlock Holmes?
I don't think so. I'll look into it for next week's episode, but I don't think
Sure.
there's a big correlation.
Sure. But yeah, so they show up, and again, thankfully, they already know him. He doesn't get this new elite team, but even they know he's a fucking asshole. Like, they basically treat him like, oh my god, this fucking asshole we have to work for. But they're all very bright, like, top of their class. Like, he chose them for, like, an elite team of, whatever residency or fellowship he's running. So, yeah, he has, like, the top doctors, and they help him.
Yeah, it's like the most advanced, or it's the most prestigious fellowship in the country, apparently.
Yeah, like, one of them, I think, went to, like, Harvard, one of them went to Princeton. I don't remember where the... Are you sure that Chase isn't just playing, like, a Asgardian with the Australian...
He does seem like that, doesn't he?
Maybe that's what he's doing.
I went to the University of Frigga,
Hi, mate!
but Omar Epps Foreman went to Johns Hopkins, which obviously is one of the best medical schools in the country.
Yeah, and he says he had never had anything less than a 4.0. Mm-hmm. So he's clearly, I really like the assistants. Omar Epps, I'm just a huge fan of him. Everything I've seen him in, I've liked him in. He was, in, what the fuck was that movie? In Too Deep, I think it was called. Where he played an undercover cop. He's great in that.
Yep.
He was, I can't, he was, what the fuck? He's been in a lot of movies I've liked. He was in, Higher Learning. He's pretty good.
Major League 2.
Yeah, he replaced Wesley Snipes. That's the first thing I saw him in. But yeah, I'm a big Omar Epps fan, so the more I see him, the happier I am. I like him. His character's like a really like kind of strong-headed guy. He doesn't really care much for a house's shit, you could tell.
Oh yeah.
But he just wants the prestigious. He wants to be the best doctor ever. He's like really a driven character.
Yeah, absolutely. And he goes about, but he cares a little more about people than House does.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we also find out that because Robin Tooney's character, who you said the name of, like they figure out that like, okay, it's not a brain tumor. We think if we give her some powerful steroids, I don't remember what they think it is that she has at that point.
Vasculitis.
Yeah, so they think of her this, it'll kind of help her out, and it does kind of help her out a bit. Mm-hmm. She's getting another scan. Was it a CAT scan? I think.
MRI.
Yeah, so she's in that thing, and then all of a sudden she starts like freaking out, and then they pull her out, and then like they have to give her like a tracheotomy.
Yeah, she had. I think they actually, so that happened first. That happened before they gave her the steroids. They think she had an allergic reaction to the gallium, which is what they use to do a contrast MRI. And,
I'm sorry. Another big point we forgot to mention was that Wilson tells House that this is his cousin, so he really wants him to pay special attention to this case.
Yeah, and it's implied at the beginning that he hasn't been seeing anybody. Like, they've been paying these doctors, these four doctors, presumably some decent salaries, and they haven't been seeing any cases or doing anything for a while.
Yeah, it seems like House mostly reviews records and makes recommendations. Like they make a big deal about him, like just kind of like walking in and like making a diagnosis without taking any vitals or anything like that. But he actually turns out to be correct for the bulk of the series that I've seen him, and he's very good at making snap judgments.
Yeah. So Wilson's like, I want you. See, both Wilson and Cuddy, as we'll find out in the next few episodes, both Wilson and Cuddy are trying to get through to him. They both knew him before he had his injury. And they say, he was kind of like always sort of jerky like this, but he's gotten a lot worse. And his character does develop and gets to be less of an asshole than he is in this episode throughout the series. But they're both trying to get him to interact more with people and humanity. Cuddy, that's why
Wilson's
she wants... go ahead.
Yeah, Wilson's like his best friend, and basically...
Yeah. And like Cuddy wants him to go to the clinic to be with more people, to experience more humanity, because if he experiences humanity, then he'll like humanity more, I guess. And Wilson wants him to actually treat patients and have an effect that he can see in someone's life, so that he can like feel more like a person again. And so they both want that for him.
Yeah, and they both also realize that he's the best doctor there is that they know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, it's imperative that he works and helps diagnose these difficult cases, which, obviously the theme of the show is that most of them have more nuance than the typical case. So yeah, I'm sorry. I think she's in the MRI machine, and like she starts freaking out. So they do an emergency tracheotomy.
Yeah.
And they're pretty puzzled by this. House is pretty convinced at this point it's not a brain tumor, but he really doesn't know what it could be.
Yeah, so that's when they go through things, and it's when he's talking to and this happens a lot in the series. He's talking to someone in the clinic, and it sparks something about the case that he's going through now. But he's talking to someone in the clinic. He's talking to the asthma kid in the clinic and the mom, and he's saying, that's
where he gets the steroids idea.
Yeah, because he talks about the inflammation, and then he says, he stops, he has that aha moment, and that's when he leaves. He's like, you don't care about doctors anyway, I'm just not going to waste my breath. So then he goes and tells his team, we have to give her steroids, because he thinks maybe it's vasculitis, which is swelling of the blood vessels in the brain, basically. And they point out...
What he says is she's very young for her.
Yeah. They point that out, and he says, well, she's 29, so whatever is happening, it's a rare thing to happen this young.
So you see, it definitely catches his interest. The more complicated cases often do.
Yep.
Like he's more interested in cracking this puzzle than the guy who has a headache once a month.
Yeah, that's why he doesn't like the clinic, because everything is straightforward. So it's like
and he feels they're beneath him, because he's definitely arrogant as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So they they give her the steroids. She gets better for a little bit, and then she crashes and goes into cardiac arrest and everything. I think she has a seizure and then just kind of flatlines. They shock her back, and it seems like she's maybe lost a little bit of mental functionality.
Right. And I think she's paralyzed, too, at this point, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. And then, so he tells Foreman that he's got to go and break into her house.
Yeah, and Foreman's kind of like, why do you ask me? And he reveals that, I know you had a sealed juvenile record, but I talked to your high school coach, and they told me,
Yep.
And then we quickly realized it's a breaking and entering charge. So we're kind of surprised in a little bit, because House definitely has a vested interest in, finding out who he's working with for his team. He definitely cultivated the best team that he...
Yeah, and so he brought him on because, he figures he doesn't trust people, so he's not going to ask for a key. He needs people to break in and stuff like that. And Foreman's a really good doctor. He has complicated reasons for each of the people that he brings on the team. At least that's what he says is sort of true in this episode, but there's more to it than that because
there's a funny exchange where he's like, "Oh, you hired me because I'm black or whatever." He's like, "No, you had a breaking and entering conviction. That's all he cared about."
right, exactly.
Because he knew that he definitely turned his entire life around. He's been nothing but the best student ever since that happened.
Yep.
And also he's helpful at House because House doesn't care about conventions. He can break into someone's house, which happens quite a bit during the series.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Almost every episode they break into the patient's house.
So really, his record at this point would be like the worst thing ever if they ever like connected the cases.
Oh yeah, but because at some point they go to her house. He asks Cameron to go with him, and she's like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, if you're gonna break into a house, it's good to have a white girl with you."
Yeah.
So they go and they look through her house and everything. He makes a sandwich.
Mold.
Yep.
Yeah, they're thinking mold might be.
Yeah.
I don't remember what else they thought, but yeah, he's thinking of some weird allergy or something at this point. And then like you said, he makes a sandwich and.
Yeah, and so like he's talking to Cameron about it, and he's like, I don't know. This is the fact that I have a record, is why he hired me. It's bullshit. And he goes through, it's like that's when he says, I got nothing less than a 4.0 and everything. She's like, you went to Hopkins, right? And he goes, yeah. And she said, so you got better grades than me. You went to a better school than I did. And he kind of laughs and he's like, how did you get hired? Did you stab a guy in a bar fight?
Yeah, that was good.
And so she confronts House with it like towards the end of the episode. And she said, did you hire me? Why'd you hire me? And he basically says, I hired you because you're beautiful. And she's like, are you kidding? And he goes, oh, would that offend you if I hired you because of some genetic gift of beauty as opposed to some genetic gift of intelligence?
Right.
He's
Which is a good point. And she's like, oh, are you trying to get my pay? He's like, no, I don't want to sleep with you. And you go ahead. You know the reason. Yeah,
he's like, you're like a nice piece of art or something to look at. And he goes, look, beautiful women don't become doctors. You could have gone into modeling. You could have done this. You could have just shown up, and people would have given you everything. But you didn't. You worked your stunning little ass off, to become a doctor. And he's like, why? What happened? Like, what? Why are you damaged? Basically is what he's saying. And that's, and he's like, Chase's dad made a phone call. That's why I hired him. All this stuff. But it's really, there are complex reasons. These three people interest him. Their psychology, what happened, their past. Basically, it's sort of, I guess it's as close as he can get to, besides with Wilson, to actual kind of like interaction, because their pasts and what made them who they are today is a puzzle to him, just like the medical stuff.
Another puzzle for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why those three interested in him, and that's why he really went after them.
Yeah, so she's making a sandwich, and they note just casually that there's some ham in the fridge.
Right.
And it's like, ham, that means pork products. Like, yep, a lot of people eat pork products.
Right. So
it makes this like wild jump to the fact that there's like some kind of parasitic worms in her system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they go, like, he's talking. He says, Foreman says that, I found ham. And he's like, she's not, Wilson's cousin because she's not Jewish because she's eating ham. And Wilson's like, are you kidding me? Lots of people. First he goes, Rachel Adler's not Jewish. Like he's saying like Adler must be a Jewish last name or something like that. And he goes, hey, lots of us, don't keep kosher, Foreman. He says another funny line. He goes, I can see getting through high school without learning anything about Jews, but medical school?
Yeah, that was a funny line there. And then he also points out that Wilson gave the wrong name for her as well.
Yeah. He says no. He says, you just called her Rebecca. Her name's Rachel. And Wilson kind of stumbles through trying to explain that one. And then House just cuts him off and says, hey, it's basically like a tapeworm. She's got a tapeworm in her brain.
then they realize that they don't see it on any test or something. And then Chase somehow points out that the contrast they used, I don't know how he knows about this, but the contrast they used wouldn't actually show that there was a tapeworm.
And she doesn't want any additional tests because she just wants to die with dignity.
Yeah, so House goes, well, there's a tapeworm that's going to kill you in like 2 days, and like he kind of talks her into letting him do that different contrast X-ray on her torso or lower legs instead.
Her leg, yeah.
Her leg, because he says, if there's a tapeworm in her, there definitely will be one in her leg because they really like the meat there or something like that.
Thigh muscle.
That's it.
Which is weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's accurate, but it is weird. So yeah, they do the X-ray, and sure enough, there's a tapeworm. Another thing I want to point out is in these early episodes, at least in this one, there's a lot of CSI type effects where they'll go inside the brain of the person and like show like an animation of like shit. I don't think they do that as much later, which I'm happy about because it's just like very obviously influenced by like CSI. At that point.
Yeah, they go through her nose into her brain. It's really weird. So every once in a while, there's one that I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But for the most part, they're just sort of tedious. And like you said, in the first, like kind of half of the first season, they do it a lot more, and then they really go away from it. And then like by the second and like third season, like by the third season, they pretty much never do it anymore, which is good.
Right. Yeah, it's distracting, and I'm sure it adds to the budget where they don't need it to.
Right, exactly. But yeah, so she agrees. Like you said, she agrees to the regular X-ray, and they say, hey, that's it. And Wilson's like, she's like, so I've got one of those in my brain, and he says, are you looking for a guarantee? I mean, it's definitely gonna be there. If it's in your leg, this is what's causing your problems. And she's like, okay, what's the treatment? And he gives her 2 pills.
He's like, yeah, take that for 30 days.
Yeah, and then she's like, that's it? And he's like, yep. And that is, I mean, that's, I can't remember what they call it, but yeah, it's just a pill that kills the thing.
Yeah, and they say it's been in their like system for like 6 or 7 years, which is terrifying in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think you have to be, like, she must have, I mean, maybe she had the flu or something like that when she ate this ham one time or whatever. But it's like, I mean, it can happen from what I read, but it's a really interesting series of events for this to happen because she would have had to be somewhat immunocompromised, so she would have had to been sick, and then at the same time eaten pork that was not fully cooked, and and had that pork at that exact time in order for this to happen, and then eventually they go through your bloodstream, and if one ends up in your brain, then actual problems can occur. Otherwise, it wouldn't really affect her. Because most people, if they ate some undercooked pork, their digestive system and their body and everything would just kill the little tapeworms, and they die.
Right.
But yeah, so so she takes that, and like I said, like we talked about before, there's a speech between her and House where he kind of lets in a little bit of his humanity and everything, and her kids come to visit her. The kids
her
from
students,
school, yeah. And
and the one kid made a hilarious like card that said, "I'm glad you didn't die."
Yeah. I like the little touches like that. It's really funny to me.
That's totally a kid thing.
But yeah, that's basically... So we got a lot into character this week, which obviously we won't have to as much in weeks going forward. At least not this in-depth about kind of the characters. But it was good to do it in this episode because, as you kind of heard as we went through the plot, not a ton really happened medical-wise, and it's because it's the pilot. The pilot needs to do a lot of stuff. It really needed to introduce the characters and everything.
And they get a lot going on in this episode. They introduce how he injured himself, all his cast of characters. There's a lot going on in this.
Yep, for sure. But overall, I think it was a pretty good episode. Did you like this episode?
Yeah, it was a good pilot. Like it set up all the elements, and like I said, it just starts from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was pretty happy with it as well.
Yeah.
But so tune in next week. We'll be on episode 2, and let us know if you like this stuff. You can mail us at email or whatever you want to call it, massivelatefee@gmail.com, and you can find us on Twitter You can listen to the regular show. You can listen to our dumpster diving. We've got all that stuff for you. But definitely thank you for listening to this. And we hope that you continue to enjoy us going through House MD.
We will see you next time, and we don't know what this is called yet.
We'll think of something. Bye.
See you next time.